and welcome to SharePoint Power Hour. I'm Laura Rogers, and this is our weekly show on Wednesdays at 11 Central. Been doing this for 6 years. Joelle is off doing something family important stuff this week, so it's just me. And so Joelle Jobson and I take turns doing some of these demos. And if you've never seen Power Hour before, it is basically all about Office 365 and SharePoint, things that you can do without necessarily being a programmer or knowing anything super technical. I do have a server admin background, but I'm not a dev. I don't write code. So you'll notice in Power Hour, there are a lot of things that we kind of figure out and sort of figure out logic around things in Power Apps and SharePoint. But this is really geared towards sort of those citizen developers, no code audience, and whether or not you're a SharePoint admin. So today's topic is going to be around web parts. Little funny background about that is that the first time, my first authoring experience was on the Moss Administrator's Companion, which that was the SharePoint 2007. It was called Microsoft Office SharePoint Services. SharePoint Server, Moss. And I wrote one chapter in that book, and it was all about just all the out-of-the-box web parts. So the web parts, that was my thing. That was the first thing I started writing about and blogging about and speaking about. So the first session that I did at a conference back in like 2008 was all about the out-of-the-box web parts. So back to web parts. All right, so we're going to be talking about these in Office 365 groups. Every SharePoint site is Office 365 group is a SharePoint site. Every SharePoint site isn't an Office 365 group, but whenever you create a group, you automatically get a SharePoint site, and you can create a team around that group. And so SharePoint is sort of, if you're in Teams or if you're in that Office 365 group, that SharePoint is inherently where the files are being stored, kind of however you're using it. So when you have a SharePoint site that is based on, does have an Office 365 group associated with it, then you're going to get this special set of web parts. Now, quick note that you're going to want to use, there are two types of sites you're going to want to use in modern SharePoint. All the other ones are legacy, and they're kind of antiquated. You kind of have to go out of your way to create the older kinds of sites. So communication sites and team sites are what you want. And a team site is what gives you an Office 365 group. Communication sites are more like that top level intranet, that one-way information, your pretty intranet homepages and all that. That's communication sites. Those aren't necessarily for day-to-day collaboration. Office 365 group sites, those are the ones where we kind of do our day-to-day work and chat with each other in teams and store our files that we're working on, collaborating on together. So I'll go ahead and start demoing this special type of web part. And if you've never seen Power Hour before, we have this Slack channel, and there's a link in the YouTube description. If you're looking at this from YouTube, there's a link in on the page that I have this YouTube video embedded on in IW Mentor to join the Slack channel. And if you've never joined before, there's a form to fill out to get. I have to manually send you an invite. So come over to the chat window, and this is where we chat. And that's the fun about having a live show, is that it's not edited or scripted, and we have a discussion the whole time. So last week we talked about Microsoft Shifts, this product that a lot of us didn't even know it was in there. And we had a lot of discussion going on around that the entire time. So that was a lot of fun. So now we'll be talking about these web parts. So I will go ahead and share my screen and go over to SharePoint. Let's see. All right, I've got this little fake homepage here. Okay, so here's my homepage in SharePoint. Now I started building a page with a bunch of these connectors on it, but I'm going to start off with a blank one, new page, to kind of show you, just introduce you to this. But this template you're looking at, by the way, this site is one of the ones from the lookbook, and we did a power hour about the SharePoint lookbook just a month or two ago, and this is one of those templates that I just, during the show, I just downloaded and installed, and it had all this lovely stuff set up as like a nice demo site. All right, so I'll go ahead and create just a new page, and I'll just create a blank page just to be able to test this. And this was being buggy for me a little while ago too. I created it. I'm not sure if it's this one site that I'm in. So I created a page, and then it just kind of sat here for a minute and didn't give me any options. So I'm not sure if there's something wrong with this site, or if there's something wrong, like if SharePoint globally is being buggy right now, but this is, it's just being weird right now. Yeah, look at that. You're right. So I'm just going to go to my site pages and just go directly to it, just like I did a few minutes ago when I was getting ready and it did this. All right, so this is the one that I already created. I'm going to try and create another one. Start with a blank page. Maybe if I do a template this time, it won't bug out. There we go. All right. So test our connectors. All right. And then I'm going to delete the web parts that are on here. I'll just delete the whole section. Okay. So now I have this page. I'll go ahead and just save it. And just so that you can see more of the surface of this as I'm demoing it, I'm going to change this to plain so that I don't have a header. All right, and then I'll start adding web parts here. So I'll go ahead and just do them down the page. Now, you'll see in an Office 365 group, you'll see some of these different colorful ones in here, kind of just interspersed, that you don't see on pages on sites that aren't Office 365 groups. A quick way to just be able to see all of them is when I expand this, I can actually go to this category called Connectors. So then this category is going to at least just show them to me in one place. Now, the trick to this is you have a whole bunch more. So it's just showing a few of them on this screen of list of web parts, but when you go to Office 365 Connectors, you have a whole bunch of other ones. So we'll go ahead and I'll just click Facebook pages. And so think about, you know, if I have a business and I want to be able to see what's going on our business, you know, Facebook page, that can get this little digest. However often things change on your page. And I get this digest and have this digest showing down my page. So when you first create one of these add one of these connectors to a page, it's going to just basically have this verbiage on it saying that someone set up the connector. So it's always going to have that at the top of, you know, of just whatever you just added. So I'll just call it IW Mentor, that's my company. All right, so then I'll go ahead and go to this screen again, expand it, go to connectors, and then I have RSS. I'll show you RSS in a minute, and let's go look at this big long list of connectors. So when I click Office 365 connectors, it's showing me all those ones that it showed me just in that small list, but it's also got like a bajillion other ones in here. So, and they're sorted by popularity, and I have this whole search interface here. Have you all seen this before? It's kind of buried in there. There's a ton in here. So I have all these different services and things that I can connect to. I noticed that a lot of these are having to do with code and collaborating on code and things like that, but there are a ton of them. Like Chattri, that's what we use for like the chat on our website when it's like, would you like to know more information about our SharePoint training? Chat with someone here on the web page. That's one of those services. So I could be able to see that Chattri information directly on my SharePoint page. A lot of these connectors are also in Slack and in Teams, and we'll explore some of the team stuff too. So you might want to scroll through here and look for stuff that you actually use at your company, like MailChimp. I think we use that for our user group. I run the Birmingham SharePoint user group, and I will, send out newsletters, use a service like that. So you'll see, look how we're still in the A's here. I mean, we're just scrolling and scrolling, and there are a ton of them. And you can even narrow it down by certain categories. Down here, by default, it just shows you all of them. Let's see. Any questions? I'm looking to see if anybody has any questions. Yeah, you're talking about the frame rate or something like that. Yeah, it uses whatever frame rate it can use according to whatever's available on my computer. So I've got nothing else running, but yeah, cool. All right, so Google Analytics, that's a useful one. I'll show you that one too. Help Scout, that's what I use. So when you email our support at iwmentor.com, it actually goes straight into this queue and creates a ticket for us and me and my team, and we can go like assign the ticket to somebody or assign it to ourselves and give it a status and stuff like that. So that's a nice little service for, at least for small companies like us. So it's just got a ton of just services having to do with just all these external services that your company might use. So like here's Salesforce, a Salesforce connector. A lot of companies use that. A lot of companies are moving to Microsoft instead of Salesforce lately. I noticed because Microsoft's really ramped up the Dynamics 365 to compete with them. Userforce. So anyway, there's a lot of them in here. So I'll go ahead and go to just kind of try out a couple of them. You can also see the ones, once you start configuring some of them, I can see if I go to configured, I'll see if I have any that I've configured yet. And my accounts, so when I go to my accounts, these are ones that I've already configured somewhere on a page somewhere. So like I have Twitter, I've already set that up, Trello, Facebook pages. So these are the ones that I've already authenticated to whatever that service is, and I've set those up. All right, so I'll go ahead and when I look at the web part, I just kind of canceled off that screen. And when I go to the web part settings, all of these are going to have this show this many items at a time. So you can control, like think about an RSS feed. You can control how many items from the RSS feed. If it's posting Google Analytics, how many of those, because all of these are like a feed of information. So they're all going to have the ability to, have items that are kind of dynamic that will appear down the page. And so you have the ability to change how many it's going to show and then go back and configure the connector. So this one, I'll just add RSS. And my RSS feed is, oh my gosh, it's like feed burner. I added on the other page. I'll just add it. And then so for an RSS feed, you can choose how often you want to get your RSS digest, and that's going to be, however often that data changes so that, you'll get updated. All right, so I'll go ahead and just publish that page, and we'll take a look at some of the other ones that I already created on a different page. I think I can just flip over to it. There we go. I just called it our stats. Okay, so any questions, just let me know in the chat. That's the fun part. Any insights or questions about what we're doing. So I've got Google Analytics. So this is, let's go look at that one. This is the Google Analytics on my IW Mentor webpage. And so I can see how many of these items. So it's doing a weekly report. So let's go look at the settings. Okay, so each connector is going to have completely different settings. Just kind of like web parts, different types of web parts have different settings, right? So each connector is going to have a completely different, unique interface here when you go to configure that web part. So this one is Google Analytics, and this one lets me pick what my Google Analytics account is and how often do I want to get an overview about my analytics. So this is what I was talking about, that's just like a feed that's going to show on your page. So I'll get daily, I will get this. Let me close this out. And since I configured it to show 4, so it'll probably just show 4 days here. So this is so this is actually a weekly report. So when I originally added this on the page, I set it to weekly. So this is my weekly report for people going to my web page, and that's straight out of Google Analytics. And then this one, let's see, over here is, and I wanted to just pick a blog that has a bunch, a ton of updates in it, so we could look at just a bunch of items in it. Let's see. Scott, are you definitely in an Office 365 group page? It'll say something like private group or public group at the top, but I'd be curious to see if you're definitely in an Office 365 group, because if you're not, then you're not going to see these, and you will just see Power Apps is the only item you'll see in that category. So I'm curious. You all try this out, so I'm curious to see if you, feel free to try it while we're going. So this AI blog, I've got Microsoft's AI blog. Of course, it will always show me this notification in the feed itself when someone updates the settings. That's kind of annoying. But this is the AI blog, and this is just the title and the post, and it's kind of ugly here, the way it looks here. So it's showing 10 items, so let me narrow it down to like 4 items. And let's see if it saved that. No, it didn't. It doesn't give me a save button. It just, yeah. All right, so let's go configure it and see if it gives me the ability to make it not so ugly. It might not. All right, so this is the RSS feed settings. Notice it looks pretty different than the other one that we looked at. So I can give it a title, and then this is the address for this feed. This is just a Microsoft blog all about AI. And there's a lot going on with AI lately, right? And this is how often do I think that they're going to post new posts? If they're only going to post, a new post once a week, then I can just check it daily or weekly. But so this is just up to me as far as how often I want it to go, check for new information and put it on my page. So this is all that it gives me as far as configuration, unfortunately. So it's just, yeah, it's kind of ugly. And that is the only options that it gives me. So I've got another one where I set up, oh, here's mine. So this is my blog. So mine is, let me just go ahead and publish that and see what it looks like just when on the page published. I threw a bunch of them on here, so it's kind of messy. All right, so on mine, so it has to do with the way the person configured their RSS feed and what information it's set up to put in the feed. So Microsoft's AI feed clearly is just sending the title twice, and it's sending it like this. But mine is, I'm sending it the title, and I'm also giving it this the main promoted picture on my blog, and I'm also giving it like the first certain number of characters of the blog post. So it's got a nice, neat output, right? So those are some of my latest blog posts. I wrote about data validation, like patterns and Power Apps as a front end, and Power Apps and Flow Convert to PDF. Just wrote those 3 in the past week, I think. And so the way it looks in here is going to have to do with the way they set up the RSS feed. So I have no control over the fact that Microsoft's data is coming out ugly from their AI feed. No offense. But yeah, but that's the only, you have no configuration options in the web part settings. All right, so another one I have in here, I have, there's Google Analytics. I'm just going to delete a couple of ones that I've already showed you. I already showed you Google Analytics. I'll get that out of the way. GitHub. I'm not a huge GitHub user. I'm not a programmer. So I happen to have a GitHub account because I was in there downloading some. There's a bunch of cool SharePoint stuff out there, like list view templates and column formatting templates and all kinds of stuff like that. So I have an account, but I'm not going to really have any data in here because I don't have any, haven't published anything to GitHub. So, but GitHub is another type of web part. I have a Trello account. So let's go look at Trello and configure it. See, this is a little buggy too. So I clicked on Trello and I clicked to configure it, and then it brought up this screen, like as if I wanted to add a new one. So I noticed when I was testing this out before Power Hour that it is a little wonky and confused when I go, like when I go to the settings here, it doesn't say Trello up here. So it's like it doesn't know that I'm on this web part. But I can also get to Trello here in the ones that I've configured, and I can get to that same settings screen this way. So if it is kind of buggy, so it's not you. So if you're kind of struggling and kind of poking around in here, that's another way to get to those settings. So this is, what do I want to be notified about? So this is going to be, it's going to show me all the Trello boards that I want to receive notifications about. And I look at all these options that I have in here. Trello is giving me a ton of different things that I can add to what do I want to be notified about in this web part. And then of course it gives me a notification that I made the changes to the configuration too. So if I have time, I might go like do something in Trello. I'll just do that real quick. I haven't logged into Trello in probably at least a year though. So hopefully I have no idea what, yeah, maybe that's my, yeah, no, I'm not going to try logging in, but I do have an account and it is set up in here and connected. I just don't, I don't use it. That's another one. All right, so let me delete that. Bing News is another one. So news is, look, see, it like took me to user voice and that's not what I clicked on. So it's a little awkward. I'll just take this link real quick and send this to you in the chat, this connector web part link. I'm going to put it in the general channel. That's where I share links instead of putting it in our conversation in Power Hour. All right. So that's going to tell you kind of just it's really basic about how to add it to the page. Okay, so this is really weird because I just clicked on Bing News and it took me to something else. So, but now when I go to configured, it looks like I did this twice. So because I did it twice because it was buggy. All right, so I'll go click manage on here and I'm going to remove one of them. And let me go try this again. And yeah, that's fun. Close it and go back in. See, it's still stuck on this user voice. I had tried putting user voice on here earlier, but I didn't do it. I click cancel and it still thinks I'm on user voice. So yeah, Bing News. Okay, so let's look at the Bing News connector, because that seems pretty cool. SharePoint news. I want to know, I want all this SharePoint news delivered to me. So I'm going to say at 11:30 a.m. I want it to give me SharePoint news about SharePoint and Microsoft, Office 365. So we'll see in 2 minutes if something appears in this web part. I'm not sure if I need to delete it and add it again since it was being weird. There we go. Okay, so we'll just see if something appears there. So it should. Let me go ahead and save this. Oh, hey, Jonathan, good to see you. Let's see, let me look at your questions here. Oh, your company turned it off. Well, yeah, we can find where it gets turned off too. We can go into the admin stuff and look for that. I remember seeing it in there. We've also got, let's look at a couple of these other types. I showed you the Facebook pages one, the RSS. Did I add any other ones? Chattri, Help Scout. So I added a couple of these, but they had a lot. So a couple of these had really complex configurations that you had to do. So for example, let's look at this one. So this one has me do, look at all these instructions. I have to take this webhook and get this webhook URL and use the secret key and read this long list of instructions on how to set up this web part. So it depends on what your service is as to how that's gonna, what it's gonna be like configuring it. Now I'll go ahead and go into the settings. So we've kind of seen a few examples of just the fact that these are all connectors to various services that are not necessarily SharePoint or Microsoft. And it gives you the ability, they're all different, they all have different settings. And then let me move this other web part over because this one looks really lovely. I'm going to take it and let's see if I can see it. It says Bitbucket on there. Isn't that weird? So see, that looks really nice going down the page like that. 4, I set it to 4 and it's still showing, a whole bunch of them. And it's still, and it says Bitbucket up here. That's really odd. So what you might want to do is you're probably not going to be putting a whole bunch of various and random connector web parts on one page anyway. So what are some kind of, we'll go to the admin and stuff in a second, but think about what are some kind of use cases. You might want to have, create one page that's got today's news with, whatever news feed you want to look at, and another page with the RSS feed of your company, or you might want to put the RSS feed of your company just on your home page. So you're probably going to be using different pages for different purposes, or and you're not necessarily going to be cramming them all into one page like I did anyway. So, all right, so let's go ahead and look at the admin stuff. This is my test tenant. Hey, Sandy. Hey, Mark. Hey. It's fun seeing everybody. All right. So it's going to be under, let me think. Not reports, not billing, not roles. Isn't there just a settings over here? Products and services. I don't really want to see billing for products and services. Let me see. Oh yeah, no, that's not what I want. That's interesting. I could have sworn there was a settings over here for just Office 365 settings. Okay, we'll just go to SharePoint. And I could have sworn I was in that settings last time on the last power hour too. See, because this is not a SharePoint setting that we're looking for. Do y'all find that every single time you want to find, oh, see, here it is. I had to click show all. So I had to click show all down here, which looked like it was associated with all these other admin centers. And I clicked show all. Then it lit up a bunch of additional stuff over here. Learn something new every day. All right, so here's services and add-ins. All right, so I've got, let's go look at, we've got Microsoft Teams here. We've got Office 365 groups. So we'll look at Teams in a second, but this is just let group members outside your organization access group content. So these settings are not related to connectors. Now I know that there are settings inside of the Office 365 group that have to do with connectors. Let's look to see if there are any sort of global connector settings. I have a feeling there are. Oh, well, that's the fun thing about having a demo tenant too. See if you can, yeah, if you're a Microsoft partner, you can get like demo tenants to be able to try stuff out. What's it doing? So we have groups. Let's just go to a single group and look at the settings in the group. Okay, so I'm going to go to it's not going to be in site settings. It's going to be in from email. So I want to go to this group over here. Is this confusing? I think it is. Okay, so this is the same Office 365 group, but I'm going to it now in here in Outlook. So I'm in Outlook now and I'm under groups. So I don't do anything usually just in here in Outlook. I usually just go to the SharePoint site. That's the link that takes you to the site though. So here's the settings page that I was looking for. All right, so connectors, there we go. All right, so this is connectors for the team. So this is where I can, as a Office 365 Groups admin, I can add my connectors and allow people who aren't necessarily managing the team and being able to get to the settings can't necessarily add these for people on the team to be able to use. So I'll go ahead, so I can add them from here. So that is at the team level, at the individual team level. The team, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say team, it's the Office 365 group. Now Teams is also going to have connectors too, so that's where it gets even more confusing. So that was kind of one of the next things I was going to show you. So I have this team pulled up, this Office 365 group, I created a team for it, and I have that pulled up over here too. So I'm going to show you kind of what I was planning on show you, and then we'll see if we can find that admin thing instead of randomly poking around in there. All right, so here's my IW Mentor team, general channel. And so, like I said, this is where we have the chat. And it's not going anywhere. And this is where the files are, which are in my SharePoint site. Let me close that other one. See, IW Mentor team. I think I'm in a different one. So this is IW Mentor team. It's IWM team. Now, does this happen at your company where you have, this is all just test stuff, but where you have like a lot of like teams and groups with different names, like with a similar name, but different people created them and they're all kind of overlapping and duplicates and stuff like that? I'm pretty sure I have that too. So, I'll go to my group settings in here. Let me go to my site information, site settings. See, that's not going to have, this is not what I was looking for at all. This is not going to have anything about the connectors in here. All right. So this is team/IWM team. And this one is this is a completely different one. This is just my root site. Haha. Okay, let's see if I have it under hidden team. Oh, here, no. Maybe if I renamed it, then I'd be able to see it. Join or create a team. Okay, so I have the team already. Well, I don't necessarily have a team for this one. I need a team. Good Lord. I'll go create one. Create from an existing Office 365 group. And I need, if I had the URL, if it listed the URLs here, that would be awesome because these are all just test sites. Well, I didn't think this was going to be so complicated. I just want to use, I just want to use one of the ones I already have. I just can't figure out why this one that I'm a member of is being weird. Anyway. Okay, so Teams has connectors. Let's just go to one of these. All right, so I've got settings. I need to make sure I'm an owner in this one. See, here are the connectors. But let me make sure, let's see, manage team. Okay, so here are the people on my team. So I am an owner. I just want to double check that. Okay, and then I've got the connectors are not here associated with the whole team. I've got connectors that I can add here. Let's go see if there are connectors in the actual settings here. Team code, no, that's just your code to log in. No, so there's nothing about connectors in these settings, but there are connectors that you can add for each channel. So let's go to the connectors for general. And this is the, look, it's the exact same looking interface, but it's slightly different. So you have a couple of ones in here that it's a different list. So you have a couple of ones in here that I didn't see over in the other in just as a web part. Now, this is calling it a connector for forms, but forms is actually its own web part that's not like an external connector. So that's really confusing, isn't it? I'm reading your questions here. Dun, dun, dun. Oh yeah, so thanks Mark. Mark posted a link how to enable or disable connectors in Office 365 groups as well as in Teams. And that is on, that's on a forum. That's not even just, it'd be nice if you had, if that was an actual, like in their official documentation. Wow, is that all just PowerShell? Oh my goodness. There's got to be a non-PowerShell way to do that. Yeah. Okay, so these are calling them connectors. So I can add these connectors and install them. So, but every single thing I add as a tab in here, it's calling it a connector. So I'm not going to do my RSS feed right now. But like when I go to add a tab here, and if I go add YouTube, it's actually asking me to install it. So all the different tabs that aren't just, you know, just out of the box Office 365 and that are just already in there, they all have this install button. So I'm installing all these external services. YouTube wasn't a thing that was necessarily in the list of connectors that we saw as web parts. Well, if you wanted to do something with YouTube as a web part, you'd use the, there's a video web part that you use for that, or I think maybe it's the embed one. It's the embed web part. So YouTube is going to give me the ability to have, let's see, I have a link to a specific, I'm not going to add a video in here, but when I go, so it's the same concept though of installing things. So when I look at these tabs over in Teams, it's got a list of things to install of all these very similar list of services, but not the exact same list of services. Notice that? So it's got a whole big long list of things to install. I can click, it tells me all about Power Apps, and I click install. So then let me close this. I don't want a Power App right now. But on each channel, I can also click connectors. And this is where I can manage what the connectors are for that channel. So like SharePoint News. It's just weird that they have these listed as connectors, and a lot of them are just out of the box stuff like SharePoint News and Power Apps, but they're just in Teams, they're just calling everything a connector. Like anything pretty much that you add is going to be a connector. All right, so that is what I just added to, you know, this certain channel. So yeah, that's nice. I like that. Okay, so that we have the concept of connectors that exist as these web parts. I'm kind of doing an overview. We have the concept of connectors that exist. Let me go back to my team, and I created this web page. So it is confusing, so I'm kind of highlighting the confusingness now. So if I go to this web part page that I created, you can see that when I added web parts, I was prompted with, I had a whole list of connectors that I could pick from. And those are a lot of these external services. But something like YouTube is, if I wanted a YouTube video on here, I would use the embed web part, and I would embed a YouTube video here on my page. But if I want to use YouTube over in Teams, it's a connector, and it's something that I can add as a tab. But on the SharePoint page, it's not listed as a connector. It's you just have to know that that's the web part you'd use. So it is a lot there. I mean, I doubt there's a list documented anywhere, and these probably change on a weekly basis, all the different connectors. But just kind of keep in mind that every single thing that is a connector web part is not equivalent to things that are connectors in Teams, and they're using different nomenclature for sort of accomplishing the same thing, like with YouTube as the example. So I just happen to know that if I want a YouTube video on my page, I can use the embed web part and put the link to the YouTube video here. And I also just happen to know that if I want, a Microsoft Forms form on my web page, I use the Microsoft Forms web part, and it is not one of the connectors. It's just a Microsoft Forms web part. And there's of course, a Power Apps. There's a Power Apps web part. But over in Teams, they are, and these are not connectors, obviously. They're just the names of the web parts. They're not listed. This one's listed as a connector for some reason. I don't know. It seems sort of ambiguous. Let me see. Any other? Oh yeah, so Trevor pointed out something. Only group owners are going to see the available connectors. Members are only going to see the one that is just that out of the box one, the Power App. So you have to be a owner. So you would think that the people that are group owners are going to be the ones that are configuring the web pages anyway, configuring the pages and putting web parts on the pages. So that makes sense. We can go look in that, let's see, where was that setting? Oh my gosh, so these groups and teams have settings in so many different places. So what Trevor's talking about is the group owners. So you can see I'm an owner here. And there isn't, so over in Teams, there's a screen where you can configure what owners and members and those different roles can do as far as connectors and some of the interaction. In SharePoint, what you're configuring with owners and members is usually just permissions and like giving people the ability to do different things in different lists and libraries. So you don't really have that granular control over, it's a completely different interface as far as managing it. Like if I go over to here in Teams and I go to my manage team and settings, so I have the ability to see, I've got member permissions here. See, I've got allow members to create, update, and remove connectors. So I don't have that concept over in my SharePoint site for the pages. So this is the setting that would be equivalent, but in SharePoint, according to Trevor, only group owners will be able to see the available connectors, but that's just to add them to the page, then members will be able to see them on the pages. So do you have, does that sound like it makes sense that they would have, owners are typically the ones creating and editing all the pages anyway for like a team collaboration site. Let's see. Todd says, can Power Apps web part take any inputs from the page? Yeah, you can do query strings in the Power Apps web part, but there are no web part connections to the Power Apps web part. At least not yet. But you can send a query string to it. So you just can't put the web part on the page and have some other web part send the query string to it. Does that make sense? Let's see. Okay, so that's the granular control you have over the connectors in a team. And then let's see, what else was I going to show you? In here, I've got apps. So apps is kind of the same concept as connectors. And when I click more apps, that takes me to a similar interface with all the categories down the left and all the apps down the right. But it's a little different, and it's visually, it looks a little different, but it's a list of a lot of the same stuff like Trello and, you know, Power Apps, Yammer, Zoom meetings, and things like that. So yeah, so concept of connectors, I would expect connectors to all be connecting to external services that are external to Office 365, which they are over in your SharePoint page, but connectors are pretty much apps, kind of the same thing over in Teams, and those are everything, even Office 365 stuff like Yammer and Forms. Huh. I didn't realize that I was going to have such just like this epiphany during this power hour about how confusing all this stuff was. I really was not planning on that being so confusing. I'm sorry. But I'm just reiterating the confusingness, and it's not you if you find that this is confusing. And, you know, everything in SharePoint used to be called apps. Like every list you created in Document Library, they were referring to all those as apps. And then they went back to the whole, like, now you're creating a document library or you're creating a list thing. And they kind of phased out the apps thing, but now they're apps in Teams. But they're also called connectors in Teams. So let me go back to my Teams. Let's see, I was over here. So then see, when I go here, I've got connectors. So in Teams, connectors, it looks like connectors are also apps. It looks like that's the exact same thing. It doesn't appear that there's any difference. So when I click the list of connectors, I get this screen with RSS and SharePoint News and Twitter and Yammer and stuff like that. But then when I go to the settings and manage team and go to apps, these are also the connectors I added, and they're referred to as apps in here. Goodness gracious. Now we've got 8 minutes left. Let's see, is there a difference between a team site created in the SharePoint Admin Center and a SharePoint site created when you created a team in Teams? Are they the same thing? When you go to, and I'll just demo that and explain the answer to that. When I go to the SharePoint Admin Center and I create, and y'all don't pick this other one down here that's all that got all the extraneous stuff, the old stuff. If I pick Team Site here, that is also going to create me an Office 365 group. Also, if I go to Teams and create a new team, that's also going to create me a new SharePoint site and Office 365 group. So it's this combo of Office 365 group and SharePoint site and maybe a team that you get. So you get this combo when you create a team site. You just don't automatically get a Microsoft team when you create a team site. So yeah, let me go back to the chat window. Let me see. That is a great question though. So there isn't a difference, Stuart. And that's also the same thing when you click create a site and you choose team site here. That's the same thing as, let me go. like an end user going to SharePoint up here and clicking create site, they get a team site that's also an Office 365 group. And if I go to Teams, where'd it go? If I go to Teams, then and I create a new team, that is going to create an Office 365 group and SharePoint site as well. But I highly encourage you that if you already have an existing Office 365 group, don't create another team that's going to have like a similar name to the Office 365 group that you have, because you don't want to have all these, like, I was in a customer's looking at their list of sites the other day, and they had one called accounting department and the other one was called like accounting members or something like that. And they both had like one person, like it looks like somebody just been kind of clicking around creating stuff, but they created it not necessarily knowing that the other one already existed. So it helps to be able to look to see if it exists yet. Stuart said, let's see. Thanks. Okay, thanks, Mark. So Mark just posted an everyday guide to Office 365 groups. It probably explains kind of a lot of the similar stuff that I just explained to you about the differences. And Stuart says our Office overlords have determined that we can create a SharePoint site outside of the enterprise, but not a Teams site. That doesn't make sense. There's no reason to create classic SharePoint sites anymore. If you want a site that doesn't have an Office 365 group, that's supposed to be your intranet like communication sites. But anything you're collaborating on files on you should just create it as a team site. Yeah, team test, new test, test 1, test 2, yeah. Okay, yeah. All right, so let's go look one more time at, we'll just wrap it up, but I'll go look one more time at some of those admin settings. Let's see. Let's see, go to so these are, you can filter this, and I went over basic beginning SharePoint administration a couple of power hours ago. But I can, when I'm doing my admin, I can filter this to just show Office 365 group sites. And then you can see all these little test sites and stuff in here, because this is just my test tenant. And IW Mentor Team, IW Mentor Test, IW Mentor Training. So there's my team site. And then let's see, what do I have control over here? I can change the URL. I can change the hub association. I can change who the owners are and control external sharing from here. So, and then once you're an owner of the team, then that's when you're going to be doing the more granular control. I'm going to look in this, let's see, I'm going to look in this settings thing one more time. No, it was the settings in here. So funny. Settings, services, and add-ins. Now, this is where you used to manage teams, but now when you go here, it kind of points you more towards the Teams Admin Center, which is over here. Oh, there's a, someone posted a link to, someone asked a question in the tech community, what's the difference between an app and a connector in Teams? Is there a difference? Let's see. Oh, that's like a forum question, right? Okay, well, Chris Webb explained it. He's one of the other MVPs. An app can be many things. It's usually a bot, dynamic card, custom app. A connector is simply a subscription to an external service like an RSS feed or polling on a timed basis. So remember that's what I was talking about with the sort of feeds, and you're going to have like daily and weekly and different things will appear on a timed basis. And that's what all those connector web parts do. So I guess the concept of the thing is in Teams, when you click on connectors, it's got all that other stuff in it, like forms and Yammer. I mean, Yammer is a feed too, but it's got a lot of things listed in there that it's odd that they would be lumped in as connectors. So, but here are there are links in there too. So, thank you for the link. Awesome. So I'll just look at one more thing in here. Let's see. In the Teams apps. Okay. So Teams apps, here's that main permission policy for apps. So allow all apps or allow specific apps and blocks others. So this is where for Teams on a global basis, you have policies that you can apply. So this is just my org-wide default policy where I can control what apps people are able to use, but I can also create other policies. Just like a lot of this stuff in the Teams admin, I can create another app permission policy and give it to like have the people who are using that policy applies to be just the IT people or just the HR people or something. So I can create a policy that's for IT and go give specific apps to them that they can use, and create a policy for that's HR people and give them just apps that I think HR people should be allowed to use. So that's what I can use permissions policies for over in Teams admin. So, and this just has to do with apps. Your list of apps down the left side of the screen, and we looked at that one last week too. All right, I'll wrap it up. Let's see. Y'all are too funny. All right. Just wanted to wrap up. Let's see. I'm trying to think of, let's see what's going on in the community. We've got Ignite coming up. I need to go ahead and submit to speak at Ignite. And that's going to be in November in Orlando. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. I run the Birmingham user group. We have every second Tuesday of every month, we have our meetings. It's sharepointbham.org. There's also, have y'all heard of Microsoft Teals, Teals? It gives you the ability to volunteer as an IT professional, volunteer in high schools to help people in the computer science classes. So I just submitted an application the other day to go volunteer at the local high school to go try helping them in computer science. It'll be interesting because a lot of the questions in the application had questions about your programming languages, that your favorite programming languages and programming classes and stuff like that. So I'm not a programmer, so that'll be interesting. I hope that they're teaching kids computer science concepts that aren't just programming. I'm pretty sure they are, but so that'll be interesting to see kind of where I fit in as far as if they, let me go volunteer at my child's high school and help out in the computer classes. But it's Microsoft Teals, so check it out if you are interested in trying that out. And thanks everybody for coming to our live Power Hour, and we will be back next Wednesday at 11 Central, and I'm not sure yet what the topic is going to be. It's probably going to be Power Apps related. Chris has been working on a cool Power App component that does some cool stuff that we might show you too. Jonathan, I don't know if Teals is only in a few states. They just opened it up to ours. I saw a big thing in the news, in the local newspaper, saying that Teals was now in, a couple of our local high schools. So that's what prompted me to go ahead and apply. But they do have a remote thing too for rural high schools and people that aren't necessarily part of it. You can volunteer to help remotely, I guess, do through virtual sessions. So you can volunteer even if they aren't local, it seems like. So I'll let you know how that goes. That'll be interesting. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. And I have, there's a women IT, speaking of not coding, there's a women IT pros link that I'll put in the chat window too, that it's virtual IT pro women. So it's not like Girls Who Code or coding for women or anything like that. It's just specifically women who are IT pros, and that's what my background is. So I'll grab that link and I'll put that in the chat window. Kathy Moya over at Microsoft gave me that link, and yeah, it's called Women IT Pros. So I'll put that in the general channel. And I'll be speaking at that in October. I'll tell you more about that later. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. My XSplit crashed again, so over and out. I'll have to kill this program. Bye everybody.